As you will have already discovered in this course, your JavaScript skills will make you a better React developer, so we need to spend some time in JavaScript. In this lesson, we are going to focus on the statements used in JavaScript. Lesson 3 is all about statements in JavaScript. The simplest kind of statements in JavaScript are expressions that have side effects. By default, the JavaScript interpreter executes statements one after another in the order that they were written. To alter this default order of execution, we use different JavaScript statements or control structures. In this lesson, we are going to be exploring the different types of operators and their uses in JavaScript, and then explain JavaScript's conditionals. That's the if-else statement and switch statements. So let's start off with JavaScript statements. Did you know that any JavaScript program is nothing more than a sequence of statements to execute? In programming languages, instructions are called statements. These statements are sentences or commands. In English, sentences end or are separated from one another with full stops. Semicolons are used in JavaScript to end statements. Operators are used to assign and compare values and perform operations in programming. Operators that work on only one value are called unary operators. They are the simplest operators in JavaScript. There are various different types of operators. You get increment and decrement operators, unary plus and minus operators, Boolean operators, equality operators, and conditional operators. Increment and decrement operators come in two versions. The first version is prefix, where versions of the operators are placed before the variable they work on, and then postfix, where the versions of the operators are placed after the variable. To use a prefix increment, which adds 1 to a numeric value, you place two plus signs in front of a variable, like this. This is effectively equal to this. To use a prefix decrement, place two minus signs before a variable, like this. When using either a prefix increment or a prefix decrement, the variable's value is changed before the statement is evaluated. In computer science, this is usually referred to as having a side effect. Take a look at this example. Here, the variable another age is initialized with the decrement value of age plus 2. Because the decrement happens first, age is set to 28, and then 2 is added, resulting in 30. And another thing that's important to note on prefix increments and decrements, the prefix increment and decrement are equal in terms of order of precedence in a statement, and therefore evaluated left to right. Take a look at this example. Over here, num3 is equal to 21, because num1 is decremented to 1 before the addition occurs. The variable num4 also contains 21, because the addition is also done using the changed values. The postfix version of increment and decrement use the same syntax, but are placed after the variable instead of before it. Postfix increments and decrements differ from the prefix versions in one important way. The increment or decrement doesn't occur until after the containing statement has been evaluated. In certain circumstances, this difference doesn't matter, as in the next example. Moving the increment operator after the variable doesn't change what these statements do, because the increment is the only operation occurring. However, when mixed with other operations, the difference becomes apparent. Do you remember this example of a prefix decrement from earlier? With just one simple change to using a postfix decrement instead of a prefix, you can see what happens. In the prefix example, num3 and num4 both ended up equal to 21, whereas the postfix example ends with num3 equals to 22 and num4 equals to 21. The difference is that the calculation for num3 uses the original value of num1, which is 2, to complete the addition, whereas num4 is using the decremented value, which is 1. Let's move on to the second type of operator, unary plus and minus operators. Unary plus is represented by a single plus sign, placed before a variable and does nothing to a numeric value. The unary minus operator's primary use is to negate a numeric value, such as converting 1 into -1. The simplest case is illustrated in this example. Okay, let's talk about Boolean operators. They are pretty important because Boolean operators are what make a programming language function. Without the capability to test relationships between two values, statements such as if and else and loops wouldn't be useful. There are 3 Boolean operators: not, and or, and we will look at each of them separately. The logical not operator is represented by an exclamation point and may be applied to any value in JavaScript. This operator always returns a Boolean value, regardless of the data type it's used on, and the logical not behaves in the following ways. If the operand is an object, false is returned. If the operand is an empty string, true is returned. If the operand is a non-empty string, false is returned, and if the operand is number 0, true is returned. The following example illustrates this behavior. The logical AND operator is represented by the double ampersand and is applied to 2 values. Here's an example. The logical AND operator can be understood at 3 different levels. At the simplest level, when used with Boolean operands, it performs the Boolean AND operation on the 2 values. It returns true if and only if both of its operand and its second operand are true. If one or both operands are false, it returns false. Logical AND behaves as described in this truth table, which you will find in your summary notes for this lesson. A quick stop to talk briefly about truth tables for those who don't know. A truth table is basically a chart set up to determine the truth or falsity of a compound statement by testing the truth value of its components. Basically, it just tells you what the output will be, depending on the inputs. The logical OR operator is represented by the double pipe in ECMA script, like this. Equality operators check whether 2 operands are the same or not by changing expression from one type to others. Determining whether 2 variables are equivalent is one of the most important operations in programming. This is fairly straightforward when dealing with strings, numbers, or Boolean values, but the task gets more complicated when you take objects into account. JavaScript provides 2 sets of operators: equal and not equal to perform conversions before comparison, and then identically equal and not identically equal to perform comparison without conversion. The equal operator in JavaScript is the double equal sign, and it returns true if the operands are equal. The not equal operator is the exclamation point followed by an equal sign, and it returns true if the 2 operands are not equal. The identically equal and not identically equal operators do the same thing as equal and not equal, except they do not convert operands before testing for equality. The identical equal operator is represented by 3 equal signs and returns true only if the operands are equal without conversion, as seen in this example. In this code, the first comparison uses the equal operator to compare the string 55, and then the number 55, which returns true. This happens because the string 55 is converted to the number 55 and then compared with the other number 55. The second comparison uses the identically equal operator to compare the string and the number without conversion, and of course, a string isn't equal to a number, so the output is false. The conditional operator takes on the same form as in Java, which is seen in this example. This basically allows a conditional assignment to a variable depending on the evaluation of the Boolean underscore expression. If it is true, then the true underscore value is assigned to the variable. If it's false, then the false underscore value is assigned to the variable. So that brings us to the end of our chat about the different types of operators. Let's talk about assignment expressions now. The value of an assignment expression is the value of the right side operand. JavaScript uses the equal sign operator to assign a value to a variable or property, as seen in this example. Besides the normal equal to assignment operator, JavaScript supports a number of other assignment operators that provide shortcuts by combining assignment with some other operation. For example, the +=2 operator performs addition and assignment, and then in this example, the first expression is equivalent to the second one. We are now going to move on into the last section of this lesson. Conditional statements execute or skip other statements, depending on the value of a specified expression. These statements are the decision points of your code. One of the most frequently used conditional statements in most programming languages is the if statement. The if statement has the following syntax. The condition can be any expression. It doesn't have to evaluate to an actual Boolean value. JavaScript automatically converts the result of the expression into a Boolean by calling the Boolean casting function on it. If the condition evaluates to true, statement 1 is executed. If the condition evaluates to false, statement 2 is executed. Each statement can either be a single line or a code block, a group of code lines enclosed within a bracket. Consider this example. Here's a good tip. It's considered best coding practice to always use block statements, even if only one line of code is to be executed. This just avoids confusion about what should be executed for each condition. You can chain if statements together like this. Another good tip for you. Many programmers enclose the bodies of if and else statements, as well as other compound statements, such as while loops, within curly brackets, even when the body consists of only a single statement. Doing this will prevent problems, so our advice would be to adopt this practice as well. The if and else statements evaluate an expression and execute one or two pieces of code, depending on the outcome. When you need to execute one of many pieces of code, a way in doing this is with the else and if statement. Take a look at this example. There is nothing special about this code, it's just a series of if statements, where each following if is a part of the else clause of the previous statement. Using the else and if idiom is preferable, it just makes it more legible, rather than writing these statements out in their syntactically equivalent fully nested forms. Take a look at this example, you'll see what I mean. The last thing that we're going to look at today is another conditional statement, known as the switch statement. An if statement causes a branch in the flow of a program's execution, and you can use the else-if idiom to perform a multi-way branch. However, this isn't the best solution when all the branches depend on the value of the same expression. In this case, it is wasteful to repeatedly evaluate that expression in multiple if statements, so the switch statement handles exactly this situation. The switch keyboard is followed by an expression in parentheses, standard brackets, and a block of code in curly brackets. Do you recall this if-else statement, the one that we looked at earlier? Well, let's take a look at this new example, where the switch statement is equivalent to the repeated if-else statement. Each case in a switch statement says, if the expression is equal to the value, execute the statement. The break keyword causes code execution to jump out of the switch statement. Without the break keyword, code execution falls to the original case into the following one. The default keyword indicates what is to be done if the expression does not evaluate to one of the cases, so basically it's an else statement. In the next lesson, we will introduce the different iteration statements available in JavaScript. There are many different kinds of loops to do that. Then we will look at the arrays and how to create them. and we will explain the different ways of adding and removing values to and from the array. Now we're going to jump into a demonstration of the uses of if statements and switch statements. Here goes nothing. Now let's see in action how these statements work. We will begin with the if statement, which is the most common structure used to make decisions in computer programs. Now, you can think of if statements as a controlled structure used to make decisions. Then, if it gives a positive result, then the actions related to that positive case are performed. For example, imagine we've created a website, and we want to make sure that everyone that visits the website is older than 18 years old. Well, then we can try something like this. Const age equal, let's say, 25. And then we write our if statement. So if age is greater than 18, and open up curly brackets. And now we want to console.log. You can see this page. You can see this page. Yep. Right, now, if I save this and then go to the console, I will find that you can see this page in the console. Right? So what happened here is we defined a variable age and assigned it a value of 25. Then we used the conditional operator is greater. And in this case, it returns true if the variable age is greater than 18. So the following line will be executed, informing us that the adult content can be seen. So this is a simple conditional check. But to make condition structure more complex, we can nest if statement, or in other words, put if structures inside another if structure. With a single line, if we can evaluate and perform one action or another according to two possibilities. But if we have more possibilities to evaluate, we must nest ifs to create the necessary code flow to decide correctly. For example, if I want to check if one number is less than or equal to another, I have to evaluate three different possibilities. Firstly, I can check if the two numbers are equal. And if they are equal, I already have solved the first problem. But if they are not equal, I will still have to see which of the two is greater. Let's take a look at this example. All right. Let's delete this. Start off fresh. Write let number 1 equal 30. And let number 2 equal 45. Now we write an if statement to check if number 1 is equal to number 2. We can simply type if number 1 equals to number 2, then do what? Can you guess? Console.log. Console.log. The two numbers are equal. So this is the first check. Okay, then if they are not equal, then we need an else statement. We just simply type else and open brackets, and then inside the brackets I will write another if. If number 1 is greater than number 1 is greater than number 2, then do the following. So console.log. Once again, open brackets, console.log. The first number is greater than the second number. The first number is greater than the second number. Then if again, the first number is not greater than the second number, then we just have one condition left. You simply type else, open brackets, console.log. Console.log. The first number is less than the second. Is less than the second. Now, before I save this, let's just first clear the console. To clear the console from the previous result, we can simply type clear and open an empty parenthesis and hit enter. And this will delete everything in the console. Alright, now we're going to save this file. So let's save this file and see what is rendered to the screen. The first number is less than the second. And that's why, because the first number is 30 and the second number is 45, right? But now, if I change this to 60, okay, let's clear the console again. And then save the file. Yep, we will find that the first number is greater than the second number. Right, so let's go back and see what is happening here. Okay, so first it evaluated if the two numbers are equal. If it's correct, a message is displayed informing you of this. Otherwise, we already know that if they are not and they are different, but we still have to find out which of the two is greater. For this, another comparison is made to find out if the first is greater than the second. So, if this comparison gives a positive result, then this message will display. Otherwise, the last message will be displayed showing that the first number is less than the second. Alright, now let's jump on over to the switch statement. Now, the switch statement helps us to make decisions based on different states of the variables. This expression is used when we have multiple possibilities as a result of evaluating a sentence. For example, suppose we want to indicate what day of the week it is. So, if the day is 1 or Monday, we get a message indicating this. And if the day is 2 or Tuesday, then we get a different message. And for each day of the week, we get a different message, except on the day 6 or Saturday or 7, which is a Sunday. So 6 and 7, Saturday and Sunday. What we want to do is we want to show a message indicating that it's weekend. For days greater than 7, we will indicate that this day does not exist. Right. So we start off typing switch, and then day of the week. Day of the week. And then we open curly brackets. And we type case 1. So case space 1. and then a colon, and hit enter. Then if it's case 1, I want to console.log, saying it's Monday. So simply type console.log, it's Monday, it's Monday. This is for case 1. After this, if it's case 1 and if it's a Monday, then we're done. Right, break, break, and then a semicolon after break. But what if it's not case 1? We need another case for another day. We simply hit enter. And then type case number 2. So case, and then a space, 2, and then the same thing, colon, and then enter console.log. It's Tuesday. And we need double quotes. I just forgot to put in the double quotes. Let me try that again. There we go. And it's Tuesday, another break. Then again, case number 3. So break, semicolon, case number 3, space 3, and then console.log. Of course, it's Wednesday. Console.log, it's Wednesday. And we keep going. So then another break and case number 4. Console.log again, it's Thursday. And then break. And then case number 5. And a colon. So console.log. It's Friday. Right. And break. Now for case number 6, I would just like to leave it like this, and let me show you. Case 6. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it like this and then write case 7. And I'll explain to you now why we didn't write anything for case number 6 or case number 7. Console.log. Case number 7, it's weekend. And then here we need to put in a break. So now we're done with all the days of the week. But what if someone puts in a number that's greater than 7? Well, then we need a default, right? We need default statements saying what will happen if there is no cases at all. Okay, so we write default. And then colon. And then we'll type any message that we want to use in this example. Well, we'll put in console.log. And that day does not exist. So now let's see how this code works. So what will happen is it will come to case 1. If the case or the day of the week that the user is entering is 1, well then it will print it's Monday, and it will break and exit the program from here. Yeah? Okay, but if it's not, it will continue to case number 2, and then the same thing in case number 2 is the exact number that the user is entering. It will give them a message saying it's Tuesday. And if not, it will jump and continue from case 3 to case 4 to case 5, and it comes to case 6. We do not actually indicate any instruction, right? Because we didn't console.log anything for case 6, because we didn't give it any instruction. But since we didn't put a break under case 6, the following sentence won't be executed, which corresponds to the sentence indicated in case number 7. And it's a message that informs it's a weekend, because case number 6 and case number 7, both Saturday and Sunday, are both weekends. If the case is 7, it simply indicates that it's the weekend as intended, right? And now let's create a variable day of the week. Let's just write down let day of the week, it's already here, equals, and then give it the initial value of 4. If I save this and go to the console, let me save it, here's the console, it's showing me the message, it's Thursday. And now if I want to change this to 3 and then save the file, it will change it to Wednesday, which is case number 3, right? Case number 3, and it's showing me Wednesday, which is case number 3. There we go. Let's throw something bigger than 7. Let's say 15. And then save. It should come back and check each case, 2 or 3, until it reaches the default, which says that date does not exist because I don't have a case of 15. And when I save this, and then go back to the console.log, that day does not exist as intended. So, well, that's it for today's lesson. I will see you in the next one. Thank you for joining me. Alright, here's a fun challenge for you to tackle once you've completed this lesson. Write a small code that defines a variable x and assign any number of your choice. Then write an if statement to check if the variable x is bigger than 5, and then print x is bigger than 5. Else print x is too small.